Everyone, and welcome to NBC6 Voices on our Facebook and YouTube pages, live streaming right now. And tonight we have a great conversation. We're talking about philanthropy, especially Black philanthropy. And when you think of philanthropy, you probably may not think about Black people, but at least not as donors, but maybe you should. Yeah, when it comes to giving, nearly 2/3 of Black households donate to community-based causes and organizations. Those donations total about $11 billion each year. Communities of color give an increasing rate, according to studies. So if you're able to give but don't know how, tonight we're talking about how to find a cause that's meaningful to you, regardless of how much you give. So please welcome our first guest to the show this evening, Matthew Beatty. He is the Vice Chairman and Chief Operating Officer of the Carrie Meek Foundation. Matt, welcome to the show.
Jawan, it is so good to be with you. Thanks for having me again.
You got it, my little brother. And I like to call him little, even though he stands taller than me, but it's all good.
Here we go.
I know, I got to mess with you. Well, let's talk about philanthropy, and let's talk about local communities like South Florida and how they're defining Black philanthropy. How would you define it?
So philanthropy in the Black community looks a little bit different than it does, for others. Blacks really are a communal people. We're community minded by nature. And so we really prefer collective giving models that allow us to give as a unit and then leverage that collective power to make an impact into the community. So think about not just the power of your dollar, but when you give your dollar and your neighbor gives her dollar and your other neighbor gives their dollar and we all give together, now we can really create a pot of resources that can be invested into Black issues and Black causes that can really make a difference.
You know, it's interesting, Matt, because a lot of people don't even know that this exists. Black philanthropy. A lot of people don't even know that it's out there, that they can benefit from it. And also, if you are a philanthropist or if you are giving, where to give. And so a lot of people have those questions as well. And you joined the Carrie Meek Foundation just a couple months ago. So I got to ask you, what drew you to that role?
When I saw what happened to George Floyd and when he was murdered live through a viral video that everyone had to experience and endure, that pain that was rampant through this country changed me. And I knew that I had to get at these issues more directly. And when I say these issues, I mean the issues that are affecting the well-being of our people in this country. And so when the Carrie Meek Foundation opportunity came along, and I saw the opportunity there to not just continue its important work of investing in grassroots organizations that are doing work on the ground in this town, but then also think about that organization more broadly as a convener that can leverage its position, leverage the incredible legacy of Carrie Meek and her work in investing in marginalized and underserved communities, and really think about systemic change and not just funding programs that are standing in the gap where our government or our for-profit businesses have failed our people and our communities, but really understanding what are the root of those issues. And not just, again, funding the program, but really looking at the source of the problem so that we can solve the issue. And we can only do that when we have a broad 360-degree view of the problem, so that we're looking across sectors, we're looking at for-profit businesses, we're looking at government entities, we're looking at the broader community and residents and nonprofits, and really seeing how the synergies that are just underlying just below the surface can be activated and invested in and then brought to the forefront so that we can actually get at the root of these major problems plaguing our community.
Amen. And you mean to tell me it wasn't the CEO title position that may have drawn you to the Carrie Meek Foundation, the Chief Operating Officer position? You mean to tell me it wasn't that? Okay, I'm gonna leave that alone.
Because and you know me well enough, brother, to know that for me, this work isn't about the title. It's not about me. It's only about how many lives my work can improve, because I've been so blessed and I've been so privileged to do this work in improving an incredible community like Miami that birthed me. I'm born and raised here, and I've had enjoyed so many incredible opportunities that the least I can do is dedicate my life to giving it back.
Amen. Amen. Sounding like your father a little bit, but I'm not going to say anything. All right. Good. For those that don't know who your father is, you're starting to sound a little bit like your father. All right. Well, tell us about the 2021 grants that the Carrie Meek Foundation gave out this year.
Sure. So we were privileged to support 13 organizations this year. And this was an initiative that we launched after our relaunch at the end of 2020, where, as I said, we, again, continue to invest in grassroots organizations, but are now also looking at the systems that are creating these issues that these organizations are addressing. But in order to get at those systems, we know that we first have to invest in the organizations that are doing the work on the ground, because they are closest to our residents and they know these issues intimately and understand the solutions. And so we wanted to get resources into their hands as quickly as possible, not only so that they can meet residents' needs in the midst of this raging pandemic that continues to disproportionately affect Black and Brown people,
Yeah.
but also support their ongoing work to advocate and begin to shift the way a lot of these systems work. And so these 13 organizations run the gamut in terms of size and scope. They do incredible work, from running food banks to supporting supporting home workers who are at risk of being evicted from their homes. It also will support TPS screenings for Haitian immigrants through Americans for Immigrant Justice. And so there is so much incredible work that is being done with these 13 organizations that we are privileged to support.
Oh, that's great. And it's interesting, Matt, because of this show, someone sent me a check for $600 and they said, please give it to an organization, to a Black organization. Well, I didn't know where to give it. So as of right now, I have not done anything with that check. I hope to do a story on it. But it goes to show that some people don't know where to give because there's so many different organizations. And so I want to ask you, as far as advice for people that may be watching this right now that do want to be philanthropists, but don't know where to start. What advice do you have for them?
Sure. Well, philanthropy, let's be clear, is nothing more than a love of people. And there's so many ways that you can show love to folks in your community. And many, Black and Brown people, this has been ingrained in your nature since day one, because so many of us are churched and know tithing. And tithing is a form of philanthropy. It is charitably giving money and resources to a nonprofit organization so that they can help improve your community. And so it's that same concept. And it doesn't have to be millions of dollars that you're amassing together in order to invest and make some big, charitable grant. It's not about the amount. It's just that you participate and that you give. Through great initiatives like Give Miami Day that the Miami Foundation has launched now for all of these years, you can find hundreds of organizations doing this work on the ground, and you can find them based on the issue that you care about. So whether it's through the Give Miami Day platform, or whether it's reaching out to organizations like the Carrie Meek Foundation and finding out what organizations we're investing in and supporting and joining us in that work, or even if it's simply talking to folks in your network and seeing what issues they care about and what are you seeing in your community, and gathering folks who are your friends or maybe colleagues, and seeing what you can do together. And it doesn't have to be just money. It could be volunteer time. It could be technical assistance and giving advice to leaders of organizations who are looking for insight into how to solve problems in our community. There's so many ways that you can give back. I think the key to start is just to take personal responsibility for doing that work and finding out where you can be helpful.
Amen to that, Matthew. That's some great information, some great insight as well for all those that may be watching this program here tonight. And we really appreciate you. And again, congratulations. I know it's not about the title, but congratulations on the Chief Operating Officer position with the Carrie Meek Foundation. And I know you do have a passion for it and continue to do some great things, my brother. We're very proud of you.
My brother, I appreciate you. Thank you for helping us get the word out about this important work. Know that this community appreciates all that you do. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, my brother. All right. Well, speaking of philanthropy, philanthropy is more than just writing checks, especially in communities of color. Even though the big word philanthropy suggests big dollar donations, that's not always the case. These days, it's also taking local dollars of every amount and putting them back into our community. And that's exactly what the Miami Foundation is doing. Sharice Grant is the organization's senior vice president and strategy advisor. She joins us now with more. And tell us about the role for all of those that may not know what the Miami Foundation does. Tell us a little bit more about what you do.
Sure. And again, thanks so much for the opportunity to be part of this and to share the story. And so the Miami Foundation, it's over 50 years old. It was started in 1967 by trust banks. And it is a institution that has fund holders and donors that grows over time. Individuals of various sizes, small as $5,000, as large as $50 million, who want to create a fund within the foundation and think of it as their own private foundation, where they can either make their grants or they can look to us to help them decide where the money goes. And what's really powerful to me about the Miami Foundation is, as Miami's permanent resource, the institutions that founded us don't exist anymore. But some of the first charities they funded do, and they are the organizations like the YWCA, St. Albans Child Care Center, which is in West Grove, Florida Memorial University. Those were among the very first organizations that were funded by what was then called the Dade Foundation.
Wow. Some of those I didn't even realize worked with the Miami Foundation. And can you tell me, Sharice, the state of Black philanthropy? What is the state of Black philanthropy, especially as it relates to the Miami Foundation?
You know, as you so well cited the information about the rate at which Black folks give. And we are coming up next week on our State of Black Philanthropy event. And that is really about honoring the legacy of Black giving. A few years ago, through our Give Miami Day, we had some folks who came to us and said, you know, we want to create a Black philanthropy fund as part of Give Miami Day. And they worked with their peers to raise money to support Black causes. It's out there. It always has been out there. As Matthew Beatty said, it's not always as visible. It comes through the church. It's giving to your college or university, and the collective mutual fund giving that often flies under the radar because philanthropy people perceive as you have to be big and wealthy to do it. You absolutely don't. And, you know, my story of how I came to this work is partly based on that, in watching what my parents did, who we were not rich. My parents and even my father to this day at 85 years old in Birmingham, Alabama, goes around the neighborhood, plants signs for people to put food out so he and his friends can collect it and take it to a food bank. It's time, it's passion, it's a generous heart. And that is really the root of philanthropy. And it's very deep in Black culture.
Amen. It really is. And I want to know a little bit more about the Miami Foundation's community funds. Applications are still open, right?
Yes, they are. Until February 26th is the deadline. So the community grants program, those are the permanent resources of the foundation. There are many programs we do, some with funds that are time limited, but these are the permanent endowed assets of the foundation. Each year, there is about a little over $1.25 million where we open up the process. We have a set of issues and priorities that we focus on, whether it's thriving children, thriving youth and families, economic stability. Some of them have evolved a bit, particularly since the onset of the pandemic. And organizations working on those issues can apply to us. And based on our priorities, we have a process to review and work with community advisors to make decisions. And one of the things that we also did this year as we revised the program is the number one priority is about how do we advance equity in marginalized communities, particularly among people of color and particularly among Black communities.
And can you tell me, Sharice, real quickly about the Racial Equity Fund?
Sure. So the Racial Equity Fund, again, is a special project that we started in the weeks following the murder of George Floyd. We knew we don't have a lot of discretionary internal resources, but we pulled together resources we had, about $100,000. We needed and wanted to set intention that we were going to do what we could to mobilize even more resources to support organizations who have been on the front line for decades fighting against racism in Greater Miami. And so we launched the fund. We weren't quite sure what was going to happen with it or how much it was going to grow. And to the point of, you don't have to be huge. The initial donations that came in, they were $5, $25. Like 90 of the 120 donations, 90 of them were less than $500. And we made some initial grants to organizations on the front line. Groups like Power U Center for Social Change, Circle of Brotherhood, Soul Sister Leadership Collective. These are groups that were out there from day one, standing in solidarity and representing the pain that the Black community was going through. And we also made some grants to individuals who were using their own platforms. And then fast forward to in December, the work that we were doing attracted the attention of Facebook, which was looking across the country at community foundations to make investments in. And we were fortunate to receive one of the grants that they awarded that's really going to allow us to scale up and do even more around helping social justice organizations in Greater Miami. So it's incredibly exciting. Started small, do something that people feel is powerful and you believe in, and it attracts the attention of others, and others are looking for places to get on board, again, to do what they can, because they can't do it all alone, but collectively we can.
And having an impact on the community as well, most importantly. So let's talk to one of your grantees, and let's welcome Janie Russell. She's with Teen Upward Bound. So Janie, first of all, welcome this evening. Tell us a little bit more about Teen Upward Bound, about your organization.
Well, thank you for having me. And Teen Upward Bound, we're located in the city of Opa-locka. We service children and families for over 20 years. We're celebrating our 20th year anniversary this year. And we provide after school and summer programs to children of all walks of life. And as you know, most of the children in our community get to do things that they wouldn't normally be able to do with Teen Upward Bound. We provide after school services, that's literacy, physical fitness, reading, help with tutoring. We also have a summer program for teens that we do financial literacy as well as entrepreneurship, where they get to write their own business plan. And then we give them a little stipend that they're able to see their business plan, whatever it is, bring their idea to life. Over the last few years, we've been blessed to have to move into a basketball program, a sport to enhance our sports program with the travel basketball, where the kids get to not only play basketball, but they get to get social benefits that sports provide. And Teen Upward Bound in 2007 was the Children's Trust, which is one of our main funders, was the Children's Trust Program of the Year. The City of Opa-locka, one of our partners as well. We were their CBO of the year. So we just try to provide those services, much needed services to the children and their families in our community. Amen. To just help them along the way and to let them know that learning is fun. Bring fun back to learning.
That's right. I wish I would have learned about financial literacy as a teenager and about entrepreneurship. So to hear that you provide these types of services and then you've added every year, it sounds like you've added another component. So how have you evolved over the past 20 years, would you say?
Well, when we first started, me and my husband of 40 something years were teenage parents, and our daughter, being a teenager, her and her friends were just hanging out at the house and decided that they wanted to talk a little bit. So we got involved in listening to what the teenagers have to say. And from that, we moved on to doing some tutoring after school and just kind of, getting some family and friends together, giving $10 here, $5 there. And out of that evolved Teen Upward Bound to where we are today. We service over 60 kids in our after school program and 120 plus in the summer program. So it has been a great journey, and we're not finished yet.
Well, we are talking about philanthropy. We're talking about Black philanthropy. So I want to know, how does Teen Upward Bound benefit from smaller grants and donors? How important is that? How do you benefit from it?
It's very, very important. As I say, when we started on a small scale with family and friends and donations. And since that time, the Miami Foundation, during this pandemic, we were able to get a small grant from them so that we could hit the ground running. Knowing our community, and when the pandemic first started, a lot of people didn't know what to do, where to go. So the Miami Foundation was able to provide Teen Upward Bound with resources to get some PPP supplies. So we were able immediately to go out in our community and to give our parents and children and a lot of the people that live in the apartment complexes, give them gloves and masks, things that they wouldn't normally have. Because, when you just have enough money maybe to pay your rent and you don't have much left over, gloves and masks was not on the agenda. But we were able to go out in the community, provide those things, and still today provide our parents and children with masks, with gloves on a weekly basis. And then we also have a community refrigerator that we partner with other organizations that we are able to have parents that can stop by and get a lunch for their children. Because most of the feeding programs, you have to be in a car, you have to drive up in your car, and transportation is a problem, a challenge, I would say, for a lot of the people in our community. So we're just glad to be able to hit the ground running is what I call it, with some of the smaller grants.
Hey, man. So you're telling me if it wasn't for the donors and the grants, Teen Upward Bound probably wouldn't be here today, but you've been here for 20 years.
Most definitely. It really helps organizations when you're able to get those smaller grants. The large grants are good because they sustain you. But when things like you have emergencies come up, the pandemic for us was an emergency. So you don't have 60 days, 90 days, 120 days to wait. So getting those smaller grants or, non-competitive grants that you're able to hit the ground and meet the need, the immediate need of the community, is a real asset in our community.
And Janie, I want to ask you, because there are probably organizations that are watching right now. Maybe it's someone with a small organization. They're in need of donors. They're in need of grants. Is it hard? Did you find the process hard? Did you find it like, oh man, I have to write a grant. I don't know how to write a grant. How did you go about it?
It is hard. I'm not gonna, yes, it is hard, and it's very competitive. And when you're a smaller organization, you don't have the resources to get a grant writer. You don't have a grant writer on board. So you have to call on your community partners, your friends, to help you, things that you don't understand. So it is a process, a learning process. So, and you don't have the skills, most smaller organizations, you are doing programming and programming beyond what is on paper. You might have a parent, they call you 7 o'clock at night and say, I need help with my child. So we don't have access to a lot of resources to be competitive. So when organizations like the Miami Foundation come along and plant into organizations, the small organization, it really helps us, and it gives us confidence to know that the work we're doing is just as important as the larger organizations, because we are on the ground. We are involved. I live in my community. I work in my community. I have recreation here. So it's important that our children, we are able to provide to our children, because we understand them. They are us and we are them. So
that's right. And you guys are doing some amazing things. And, I just want to say thank you for what you're doing in the community. We need more organizations like yourself that continues to provide and grow those in our community and provide some of the different areas that you pointed out. Now, Sharice, before we go, hearing that, I just want to ask you, hearing some of the things that you heard there, and we're going to take you off of mute. What are your thoughts? Because I was floored by some of the things that Janie was talking about that their organization does. I know that this is just one of the many organizations you help out, but what do you think hearing about that? Because she said this would not exist if it wasn't for the Miami Foundation and small donors.
Again, just hearing the powerful work that Janie does, it always moves me. And it's what she says is true. Foundations by nature, we have these competitive process because we have limited resources. We have to have ways to make decisions from all the requests that are out there. But one of the things that we have really doubled down on, especially this year, is how accessible we are. There is still a grant application, but there's a team of folks I work with who have gone above and beyond in creating office hours and conversations, being able to talk to people before they even start to put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard, so that we can learn about them beyond what they share on paper. And as we move into the work of the Racial Equity Fund, we're actually going to be starting to do a little experimenting with video meetings where we ask the questions that people would have put on paper. It is hard for small organizations to find time to write. It is hard to write a compelling proposal of any kind. So we're really trying to think creatively about how do we remove those barriers to access to be able to get to the great work they're doing.
Yeah, because it sounds like that you heard her say just how difficult, how hard it is, but that could be a barrier, a wall somewhat for those Black organizations that are out there that are smaller, like she said, that they don't have those writers in the office that can grant writers in the office. So knowing that if you guys can provide that, or just as far as helping to network, as she said, with others who can do it and have those conversations and continue to educate, it seems like that can be a big help.
Yeah, it can. And, the other thing that did come about because of the pandemic is the prevalence of video technology. Once upon a time, video technology was only for companies who had, a room to do it. It is now fundamentally possible to talk to anyone, anywhere, and have them tell you their story. So I think it is a coming time for folks to think about, what's the purpose of putting all of this down on paper? There's still going to have to be some, but technology is transforming how we can get information, how we can communicate. As a former journalist, I know that really well. And you can feel how power there is in listening to Janie tell her story. That the truth of the matter is, how do you get that onto paper? Or can you do a combination of both? So we know in order to build these organizations, philanthropy and foundations are going to have to think really creatively about how do we remove those barriers to access.
So very true. And again, Sharice, I want to thank you so much. I want to thank you and the Miami Foundation for all you do for so many organizations out there. I want to thank Matt for joining us a little bit earlier. And Janie, I want to thank you as well, and what Teen Upward Bound is doing. Thank you both all for joining me this evening for this all-important conversation. I know I'm empowered just by both of your words and everything that you had to say. Thank you so much. for joining us.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity, and really, really appreciate it.
Amen. Thank you. All right, folks, this has been a great show. Remember, you can watch this show at 9:30 a.m. on Saturday mornings, right after our early morning newscast. And be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And you can also message us on social media if you have a story idea or just a thought that you want to share. And before we go, remember, as you heard right there, education is the key to success. If you believe, you will succeed. We'll see you next time. Have a great week.